Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Somerset Council Executive. We're at the Luttrell Room in County Hall, Wednesday, the 5th of November. My name is Liz Lyshan. I'm the Deputy Leader of Council, and the reason I'm in this seat today is that the leader, Councillor Bill Revans, and the Chief Executive are at a local government association event. They will be joining us online for the latter part of the meeting. So if I could just start with welcoming you all to the room and online, and remind you that it is only the executive lead members present in the room that are taking the decisions at the meeting. Others in attendance are there to provide advice. We have no planned fire drills today, so in the event of any fire alarm, please follow the fire exit signs and congregate in the car park by Shire Hall. If anybody present might need assistance in exiting the building, please let one of Democratic Services team know. The agenda and papers have been published on the Council's website in advance of the meeting, and the Council recognises the importance of striking a balance between providing opportunities for the lawful expression of views and any unacceptable behaviours or action that causes disruption, which can lead to our meetings being adjourned. The Council will be making a recording of the meeting, and this will be published in due course. So we will, as usual now, be running this meeting using a hybrid format. Executive lead members and key officers are physically present in the Luttrell Room. Other elected members and officers may be present physically or remotely, joining the meeting to speak on specific agenda items or simply to observe. This meeting is being broadcast, as I've said, and therefore other members of the public, press and partners can observe the meeting remotely. So please use, if you're at home or in your office online, please use the meeting chat function only for the purposes of the meeting, primarily to indicate that you wish to speak, or use the hands up function. Please only speak at the chair's invitation. Please say your name before speaking if I haven't already done that. And please, of course, always remember the importance of turning off microphones and cameras when not speaking. So I'd like to, before I move to apologies, agenda item 1, I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome to the Council the 2 new councillors, Councillor Ewan Cameron for the Glastonbury division and Councillor Cara Strom for the Dunster division. Welcome, both of you. And now I move, if I may, to agenda item 1, apologies for absence. So I have already mentioned for executive lead members, Councillor Bill Revans. I also have apologies from Councillor Graham Oakes due to illness. And then for officers, we have apologies, as we've said, for Duncan Sharkey, also Alison Bell and Claire Winter, for whom I think Phil Curd will be assisting Councillor Heather Shearer in presenting 3 papers today for children's. Do we have any other apologies, colleagues and officers? No, nothing else I see in the room. So we'll move to agenda item 2, which is the minutes of the previous meetings. So this is the meeting that was held here on the 1st of October, and also the meeting that was held on the 24th of October at Frome. So do you colleagues on the executive have any comments or amendments on these meetings, or are you happy for me to sign them as a true record? If so, could I have a proposer, Heather Shearer, and a seconder, Sarah Wakefield? Thank you very much. So I will sign those minutes at the end of this meeting, or more likely in the comfort break. So now I go to agenda item 3, which is declarations of interest. We already have our City Town Parish Council memberships. Are there any other declarations of interest on this agenda? No? Thank you. Agenda item 4, public question time. If I could just ask Mike Bryant, do we have any public questions today? So no public questions today. Agenda item 5 is questions from councillors to the executive, and we do have a number of questions here. So they are from Councillor Caroline Ellis, Councillor Diego Rodriguez, Councillor Tom Power, Councillor Sue Osborne. So if we may, I can see that Councillor Caroline Ellis is online. Welcome, Caroline. If I could ask you, please, to put your question first. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me okay. I'm never sure when I'm remote. Can you hear me?
We certainly can. Thank you.
Oh, fabulous. Sorry, I'll try not to boom. So my question is about the impact of our council tax reduction scheme policy on a very vulnerable group of universal credit recipients and the urgent need for action to avert harm. So on the 2nd of October, Citizens Advice Somerset sent a briefing round, I think it was to all councillors, flagging up how our CTRS had made a very vulnerable group of universal credit claimants, those receiving the limited capability for work-related activity element, suddenly and considerably worse off with damaging consequences for their health and well-being. And they pointed out that this group of disabled people who are unlikely to be able to work have been hit by council tax bills of several hundreds of pounds. Previously, they weren't paying any council tax, most of them. And this is following their forced migration, which is via DWP and government policy, obviously, from income-related employment and support allowance to universal credit. So as I said previously, under our policy, people who were receiving IRESA were exempted. They didn't pay any council tax because we recognise that they're incredibly poor and they didn't have the means to, through work, to better their situation and increase their income. So they were passported onto the 100% discount. Those people are not able to claim that anymore. They've all been they are being, within the next few months, probably this will be completed, forced to go on to universal credit. And the equivalent under universal credit is they get this LCWRA element to sort of level them up. And they're all told, this will be fine, you won't be any worse off. However, in Somerset, they are. And even though their income hasn't changed, by moving to universal credit, it's just a change in the name of the benefit they rely to live on. But suddenly they've been hit with hundreds of pounds of council tax bills that have sent them into a sort of spiral of, in many cases, desperation. And there is a number of harrowing case studies in the briefing. A lot of us have had, I've got casework relating to this. It sent chills down my spine. I'm sure I'm not alone in that. And we were warned that it affects up to 4,481 disabled residents. So I'm really fearful for these residents and the impact this is having on them. I'm wondering why we haven't had a CTRS consultation this year in light of the DWP suddenly pressing fast forward on UC migration. And I just fear that we've prioritised administrative convenience. I know we've got a big job with them, bringing all the systems together, but that's been prioritised over the well-being of this particular group. I'd like to know if there will be a consultation in autumn 2026, as recommended by Citizens Advice, to review the impact of the policy and allow for changes from April 27. And also, I think, given that the existing policy raises issues under the Equality Act, and potentially, if challenged in court, could be found in contravention of it, isn't there a case for urgent and a simple policy change without having to consult on it, because it's about legal compliance and best practice, I suppose, to be effective for the next financial year? And more importantly, what are we going to do to address the harm being done now? Citizens Advice made a number of recommendations for ideas for what we could do to lessen the impact. We could apply a higher disability disregard to those in receipt of the LCWRA element, or we could do an automatic credit to their council tax bills. I'm just very crucially aware that we have discretion. We don't have to take this money off them. I don't think anybody anticipated us having this sort of windfall off the back of disabled people in this way. So I think we need to do something. We need to do it urgently. And I don't think relying on the exceptional hardship scheme will cut it, because as Citizens Advice have pointed out, these are stressed, anxious, very excluded people. You have to be aware of the scheme. You have to be able to navigate it. It's very hard. It asks you 10 tons of questions. You've got to dig out a lot of information. The outcome of it is uncertain. So I think it's unreasonable just to rely on that. And would you agree in principle that we shouldn't be penalising claimants on LCWRA, or even people who have the carers elements of UC with higher council tax bills? And should we actually, for the future, be disregarding all non-standard elements of universal credit for council tax reduction income calculations?
Thank you, Caroline. So I will respond to your question. I will be sending you a much longer written response, but for the purposes of this meeting, it's a shorter verbal response. So as you've said, since 2016, the government has been transitioning recipients of legacy benefits to universal credit. The current government has continued that process, accelerating the timeline to conclude by the end of this financial year, which is earlier than the original 2028 target. I want to thank everyone who has taken the time to contact me, including our MPs and councillor colleagues. I also extend my gratitude to Citizens Advice for their invaluable support and insight. This year, many Somerset residents have moved from the ESA, Employment and Support Allowance, to Universal Credit, including those with limited capability for work and work-related activity. We recognise the challenges this transition presents, particularly for our more vulnerable residents. And this was recognised at Corporate and Resources Scrutiny on the 30th of July. The financial emergency that we have faced stems from a fundamental imbalance. Our expenditure, including over 400 million annually to support those most in need, exceeds our income, which is primarily derived from council tax. In response, we have made necessary changes, including to our council tax reduction scheme and our exceptional hardship scheme, with the allocation of 800,000 from the Household Support Fund. I acknowledge that council tax reduction schemes vary across the South West, indeed the whole country, and that Somerset's lower council tax base often coincides with higher levels of need. This is a structural unfairness that must be addressed nationally. For 2026-27, my focus will be on revising our exceptional hardship policy and shaping the newly renamed Crisis and Resilience Fund, formerly the Household Support Fund. We are currently reviewing our exceptional hardship policy, and this will be presented to scrutiny, Corporate and Resources Scrutiny, at the end of November, followed by executive and then full council in December. We remain committed to supporting residents through these changes. And as I said, a much longer written response will be sent to you, Councillor Ellis, and of course to all members following this meeting. Thank you. If I could move now to the two questions that we have from Councillor Diego Rodriguez, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My first question, it was reported that as of 31st of December 2024, Somerset Council had sold properties for £76 million that originally cost £104 million to buy, so a loss of £27 million, while the £104 million debt remains with the council and council taxpayers. In 2017, South Somerset District Council purchased the Marks and Spencer site on Middle Street in Yeovil for £7.65 million. This council later put it on the market for £2.8 million. What I'm asking you is to just level with the people of Yeovil, the people of Somerset, and tell us, firstly, has the property been sold, yes or no? And if so, how much for, and how much borrowing remains outstanding from that sale?
I'm quite happy to take your two questions separately because they'll have answers from different lead members. So I will take the answer for your first question. And as I've said, my response refers only to question 2A. So progress is regularly reported to the Property and Investments Executive Subcommittee. Individual property information, as requested in this question, is treated as confidential, being commercially sensitive. The information on the specific sale is included in reports to the Property and Investment Executive Subcommittee, which you, Councillor Rodriguez, like all members, have access to. It is not being repeated here as it remains confidential. On borrowing, although the council does not hold borrowing specifically attributable to each asset, as all borrowing depends on daily management of cash flow, analysis has been assembled showing the gross return, the rent, from each property, the net operating profit reflecting the impact of void costs, contributions to reserve fund, portfolio management costs, and the apportioned estimated net of finance cost, deficit or surplus. This information is included in reports to the Property and Investment Executive Subcommittee, which all elected members have access to, both papers and meetings. And as we have said before, members are now able to join those confidential meetings online, subject to confirming that they are in a room on their own and not overheard. So if I could ask you now to go to your second question, please.
Thank you, Chair. My second question. So people in Bridgwater are sick to death of the traffic in the town and the decisions that the council take which make life harder for people just to get about their everyday lives. In 2021, the former council secured government funding to upgrade the Cross Rifles roundabout in Bridgwater. It was going to improve traffic flow and reduce congestion, and also increase capacity. Additional contributions for that scheme, I understand, were also made by Hinkley Point C and various housing developments as part of planning obligations. However, in 2023, this council delayed that scheme, and then in 2024, it scrapped the planned scheme entirely. So my question is, if developments or road layout changes were approved on the assumption that this roundabout upgrade would help mitigate their traffic impact, does the lead member accept that cancelling it has removed a piece of mitigation intended to manage that additional pressure on the road network?
Thank you. And I'll go to Councillor Richard Wilkins, the lead member, for answer, please.
Thank you, Chair. The government funds secured were for the whole A38 Northern Corridor programme, not for the Cross Rifles Junction alone, which encountered inflationary costs increases and significant project risk around land acquisition and delivery for the Cross Rifles element. It was agreed within the fixed funding available that completing the Dumble improvements was more critical to the growth of the area. A transparent decision in August 2024 agreed to refocus the Cross Rifles project away from the highway capacity scheme, which required significant land take, to instead work within existing highway boundaries to deliver safety improvements and other links which would facilitate walking and wheeling and safer and quieter streets away from the junction itself. The 2 million developer funding contributions have agreements explicitly referring to walking and cycling measures as an agreed use of the funding to help manage the impacts of those developments.
Thank you. And the next questions are from Councillor Tom Power. You have two questions. They will both be answered by the same lead member. So if you'd be kind enough to put them both together, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. At the meeting held in August, my colleague, Councillor Cook-Woodman, raised a question regarding the ongoing issues related to the unauthorised traveller encampment, particularly those seen in Glastonbury and Burnham-on-Sea. In response, Councillor Federica Smith-Roberts stated that the council was asked to create a task force to begin identifying suitable transit sites in Somerset and invited landowners or communities to come forward with potential locations. Could the Conservative group please be allocated at least 2 seats on this task force, given the situation that our members find themselves in regarding dealing with these endless resident inquiries on this matter? Could we please have an update on the progress made by this task force, with what improvements or developments have taken place since August? And the second question, the expected timescale for the full implementation of a designated traveller site within Somerset. Thank you.
So, before I go to Councillor Federica Smith-Roberts for answer, we will be responding to the answers that you submitted in writing. Okay, so over to Federica, please.
Thanks, Tom, for your questions. I'll just give an update on some improvements and developments that have taken place since August. So in Taunton, site protection measures have been installed at Silk Mills Park and Ride to reduce the incidents at that location. In Bridgewater, we've done an assessment of the B&M car park to identify potential measures to reduce recurring incidents. Recommendations are currently being evaluated, taking both cost and effectiveness into account. We have been engaging in Burnham with the town council. I think they've got a town traveller engagement group. I'm not sure if that's the correct name, but we'll go, that's what I've got here. But we've reviewed security at the Bay Centre following the encampment in 2024 and some improvements using concrete Lego blocks. And there were no encampments here in 2025. We're working with that group on costings for improvements to the Esplanade and to Priory Gardens to take place over the winter. As you'll expect, the Esplanade is quite difficult. It's a really long piece of land. Somerset Council continues to explore options for establishing a temporary stopping place. So we do have an officer working on that to support the effective management of unauthorised encampments across the whole of the county. Initial discussions are happening with stakeholders, including the police. And they've been constructive, and we've got early assessments trying to find and suggest a suitable location that could be achievable. At this stage, the council is reviewing information to better understand the implications and requirements associated with potential sites, and we are committed to ensuring that any proposals are thoroughly assessed and work with the community on engagement at the appropriate time. In relation to just one other aspect that we're currently working on, our officers and members, I believe it's Councillor Liz Lation, has engaged with Bristol City Council to better understand what Bristol are doing with their meanwhile sites, which are temporary use of land intended for development in the future. And we've also got the Glastonbury Town Deal Enabling Project, which may offer an opportunity to pilot this approach in Glastonbury, and that work is ongoing. With relation to a timescale, don't have any set dates or anything at the moment, but we are working on it and have got an officer looking at sites.
Thank you very much. And the next questions are from Sue Osborne. They'll be answered by Councillor Theo Butt-Philip. They're under 7 questions, so as concise as you can be, please, Councillor Osborne.
Thank you. Of course I will, Councillor Lation. They're relatively short questions, but I couldn't comment on the answers. Somerset Council has an ongoing programme of devolving some of its assets and services to town and parish councils that have expressed an interest and a commitment to doing this, and we've been running this programme for probably 2 years now, excuse me. To date, some 38 devolution deals have been agreed with town, city and parish councils. There are many more in the pipeline sitting at different stages along the council's 6-step asset and devolution pathway. So far, this has saved the council some £1.227 million, which seems a very modest contribution towards filling the 108 million black hole in the council's finances for 26-27. At this point, staff and resource costs cannot be fully quantified, as some of the staff costs are classed as sunk. Residents, particularly in the larger town councils who've seen significant preset rises, can therefore be forgiven for feeling that they are actually paying twice for the same service. Therefore, I have the following questions for Executive. What are the costs incurred by Somerset Council where known, per completed devolution deal? Has there been any audit work done to establish the value for money and delivery for both Somerset Council and the receiving councils? If this hasn't been done, when is this work likely to be carried out? Question 4, has any evaluation been done to ensure that the completed deals have been successfully embedded and are fully compliant with the terms and conditions of the transfers? Question 5, where does this programme sit in the Council's priorities when there are competing demands for resources from other programmes such as Transformation Phase 2, Business Case Delivery and the Pay and Grading Programme, not to mention the work of the finance team in dealing with preparing accounts and complying with government and auditor demands? And at the moment, the finance department lead on 60% of the actions required of us by auditors. Question number 6, what is the risk to the devolution programme being paused in order to prioritise resources for those other areas of work cited above that are critical to the council's survival? And it wasn't now acknowledged at both corporate and resources and audit that there is a very real risk of overload on some of our services, notably finance and legal. Question 7. Can you confirm that existing expressions of interest, i.e. those in the pipeline, will be processed where both sides are willing to proceed? Thank you. I hope that was not too onerous for you, Councillor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Osborne. I will go to Councillor Butt-Philip. I just need to say that your figure of 108 million is not a figure I recognise as lead member. So at this stage, I'd like to go to Councillor Theo Butt-Philip for answers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. With a lack of qualifications in astrophysics, I won't answer about black holes, but I will answer the other questions. So thank you very much for your questions, Councillor Osborne. The figure of 38 relates to the number of completed individual transfers. At the time of writing the paper to the last Corporate and Resources Scrutiny Committee, there are now in excess of 60 transfer completions. Somerset Council's costs associated with devolution fall mainly into two categories: staff resource, principally property, operational teams, HR and finance. Generally, activities have been undertaken by those teams alongside their other activities, and legal costs associated with the transfer of assets. These cases are assigned to internal legal services and, if appropriate for capacity reasons, assigned to an outsourced firm of solicitors. Additional financial resources were put in place to ensure capacity to help deliver the devolution programme. This has now either been used or allocated. The two large draws on these funds have been on legal costs, followed by programme management. Much of this is not attributable to individual deals, and therefore I do not believe that an attempt to estimate the cost on an individual case-by-case basis would be particularly informative, but the overall figures are available. No formal value for money assessment has been undertaken of the various devolution agreements. The agreements with each city, town and parish have allowed them to take on assets and deliver services with greater flexibility to determine how those assets are managed and services delivered. Owing to their variety of uses, methods of delivery and service standards, like-for-like comparison would not be helpful. It is not currently planned to undertake such an assessment. There are limited terms and conditions applied to the transfers. There are protections in place for buildings and assets, but service standards are at the discretion of parish councils and indeed city and town councils, unless otherwise covered by legislation or regulation. If Councillor Osborne is concerned about any specific services or any specific city, town or parish, then she can raise those concerns with me or with the team. It is always necessary to consider the competing demands placed upon our resources when seeking to deliver a number of different initiatives. The devolution programme remains important both because of its ability to realise savings for the council, but also because it enables city, town and parish councils to have a greater influence over the assets and services their communities value. There is no plan to pause the devolution programme. A number of key devolution deals have been delivered, others are in the process of completion, and we have further expressions of interest which we will take forward. I hope my answer has not been too onerous.
Thank you both for not being too onerous.
Just to come back very
No,
briefly. No,
I'm not sure that we're going into debate at this stage, Councillor Osborne, and I am moving on at this point to the reports for decision. Colleagues, we are moving to agenda item 7, the business case. So this is the full business case for the pay and reward programme. So this is coming back to executive as promised in May of this year when we saw the outline business case. And at this stage, I will go to Councillor Theobald Philip to introduce. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. As you have rightly highlighted, the original report came to us in May, having first been, having first been to corporate and resources scrutiny. But we did promise at the time to bring back the full business case, and that is why we are back in front of this body today. Again, this was given a very thorough consideration by the Corporate and Resources Scrutiny Committee last week, which colleagues will outline in the presentation. And just to say that this is a vital piece of work. It remains a vital piece of work in order to get to a point where this council has a set of sets of terms and conditions, pay and grading, job evaluation, which are fit for purpose. We have not been through a full review of this for some 21 years now, and post local government reorganisation, this was always going to be an essential piece of work. Very interesting to note that in some other authorities which went unitary at the same time as us or before, the terms and conditions of the successor of the continuing authority, in those cases the county councils, were often considerably more favourable than those of the district councils. That not being the case here has led to greater challenges than you might find in, for example, North Yorkshire. It's important that we rebalance this and ensure that we both minimise any potential equal pay claims and also ensure that we are paying salaries which are market right and will attract people to, in particular, some of the roles where we know we struggle to recruit, and we know that one of those factors is because of our salaries not being at the level they ought to be, as evidenced by the fact that we have some 1,000 posts within the organisation receiving recruitment and retention allowances. We need to move to a much more consistent and fairer long-term arrangement, and this is what this work is intended to do. I will now hand over to Nicola Hawayak, who will take us through the report in a little bit more detail, but hopefully in not too much.
Thank you. So so the ask of executive today is to, there are two recommendations within the report. One is to endorse the approach that's outlined in the full business case, and the second recommendation is that executive agree that member oversight of the programme moving forward will be through the HR committee. So just to reiterate a couple of the points that have been made. So the outline business case, as we said, it did go to scrutiny in April and was signed off by executive on the 12th of May. This is part of the council's wider transformation and is aligned to the new council's people strategy. And the reasons that we're undertaking this work, so it's to comply with the council's obligations under the Equality Act 2010, to ensure we have pay and reward arrangements that are affordable, fair and equitable. It's also an opportunity to streamline related HR policies and processes. It's to provide the council with a compelling reward offer in support of ongoing recruitment and retention and issues and development of the workforce moving forward. And also to review the job evaluation methodology that we use to enable all roles across the organisation to be scored and ranked, ensuring equal pay for work of equal value. The approach that we're taking is supported by recommendations from both SIPFA and the peer challenge that was undertaken in the council to address these issues, and has been mentioned this is the next natural focus following LGR and the restructuring that the council went through last year. So the full business case, as opposed to the outline business case, it provides more detail around the deliverables, the project timeline and milestones, the resources that we will be we're anticipating for the project to be delivered, the governance around the project, risks and budget implications. So just wanted to pick up a couple of those points just in a bit more detail. Firstly, there was an addendum published in relation to the initial paper. So part of that addendum was just a correction around the financials. So the narrative in section 4 was correct, but we noticed that the table 4.1 actually showed the 7 million increase in the base budget from 2026-27 with a further 7 million increase from 27-28. This has been amended in line with the narrative now to show that the 7 million increase from 2027-28 with a further 7 million increase from 28-29. So it's just shifting the years. And this amendment also reflects the draft MTFP for 26-27 to 2030-31, as was considered by Executive on the 8th of September this year. So the amended table has been published in the addendum and will be in the final business case. In addition, the addendum outlined 2 recommendations, excuse me, I'm recovering from a cough here, 2 recommendations that came from Scrutiny Committee. So the first recommendation was that it should be made explicit within the full business case that the Inspiring Innovation Assurance Board be part of the governance structure for the pay and grading review. And the second recommendation was that members receive clear updates on the affordability of implementing the pay and grading structure for the council as early as possible throughout the life of the programme as more detail becomes available. Excuse me. The only other point I really wanted to pick up on this point was around the budget. So the project costs, the one-off project costs of up to 3 million were agreed by Executive on the 12th of May. And just to clarify that money is being used, part of it will be used to sort of fund the expert external partner we're working with, but it will also be used to fund the dedicated project resources within the council and as detailed within the business case, plus any systems costs that might be needed as part of the project. The other budget implication I just wanted to flag, which is outlined in the report, is the potential increase in pay bill costs as a result of this project. And that is, as mentioned, it's the budget growth of 7 million made in the general fund base budget estimate within the MTFP for 27-28, rising to 14 million in 28-29. So those are the key points I wanted to flag in relation to the report.
Thank you very much, Nicola, and thank you, Thea. I just want to say thank you to Scrutiny. Scrutiny did a really good job looking at this paper and the amendment that is on the agenda supplement is from Scrutiny, and also those 2 recommendations I think are very welcome to the Executive, and I'm sure will be to all councillors of Somerset Council. So I'm going to start, unless Theo, you want to say anything further at this stage. So I have Mike Rigby and then Sarah Wake.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really pleased to hear Councillor Butt-Phillip reinforce today the issue about how recruitment and retention at the new council has been hamstrung by the fact that Somerset County Council, which became the continuing authority, that the terms and conditions there were less favourable than the district councils. It's important to really emphasise that this isn't some pay bonanza for staff here, but we urgently need to correct some of the imbalances, and we need to do it in a way that doesn't put us on the end of a massive equal pay claim like the one that sunk Birmingham. If we're going to avoid those claims, we currently have to fill a significant number of roles with interims, and they're often paid substantially more than a directly employed member of staff. So by pressing on with this piece of work, and I think we need to do it with all speed, we can correctly regrade those roles and save substantial sums of money by replacing those interims and some of the outsourced contracts that we've had to engage in to fill those holes. We can save substantial amounts of money by replacing those with our own staff. So I think it's a really important piece of work, absolutely essential, and the sooner we get it landed, the better.
I'm not sure that I heard a question in there, but some very important points, and points that I know the leader of council and I have made at panel events where we've been talking to councils that are still to go through LGR, because that is such an important point about a continuing council, its terms and conditions, its pay and grading. Obviously, it's going to look different all across the parts of the country that are going through LGR over the next couple of years. And this is a point that you make, Mike, that I had not appreciated before vesting day. I had not appreciated the relevance of where the continuing councils terms and conditions and pay and grading were so absolutely vital to the sustainability of Somerset Council once it went through vesting. And so this is one of the most important pieces of work that we will do. And I want to make the point as well, to add to your points, that we had to sort out the establishment cost first, and therefore had to go through the restructure before this work could start. One of the questions I get asked by members of the public as well as members is, why didn't you do this before? Why didn't you start it earlier? Why didn't you do it before vesting? And as Theo has made the point, in North Yorkshire, it's a very, very different set of circumstances. So thank you for your good points, Mike. So I'll go now to Councillor Sarah Wakefield. Sarah.
Yeah, thank you. And a certain amount of what I was going to say has been covered. I was going to say, I'm assuming that this exercise is a prudent thing for any organisation to do every so often. I'd be interested to know when it was last done. I mean, because terms and conditions change, ways of working change, all sorts of things change about the way people do work, plus the fact we've had now we've got a settled establishment, which we didn't have, so we were able to do it. I get that. So I'd quite like to know how often this sort of exercise should be done, if there's any knowledge about that, and when it was last done, perhaps at Somerset County Council, which was the continuing council. On the scrutiny point of affordability, I'd like to ask the Section 151 officer whether he would allow us to embark on an exercise which we couldn't afford. There seems absolutely no point in doing that. It's all very well, as somebody has already said, to say, oh, everybody needs a pay rise, but if you can't afford it, there's no point in making that statement. So I just want to be assured about the affordability. That's part of the recommendation too, but I can't, from the scrutiny committee, but I can't understand why we would do an exercise that we couldn't afford. And the third question I had was, how does it affect TUPE? Because quite a lot of the people who work for us came across from other authorities and were TUPE'd in. Will their terms remain the same, or can they be changed by this? There was a mention of streamlining HR policies, for example. Can they be changed as a result of this exercise? So I think there are 3 questions there.
3 good questions. So I think questions 1 and 3 will go to Dawn Betteridge, if that's okay, and Nicola as well, if you want. And then I think question 2 on affordability should go to our Section 151 officer. So Dawn, if you and Nicola could take questions 1 and 3, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, in response to the first question about when were the pay structures last considered, Somerset County Council last did a full review of their pay and grading structure back, we believe, in 2004. They did a light touch review in consultation with the trade unions around 2014. So as you can imagine, that's quite a considerable time before vesting day in 2023, when we became Somerset Council. Clearly, the district councils will have reviewed their pay and grading structures as well over that period of time. The other thing to probably mention is that due to the annual pay reviews that are negotiated nationally for local authorities, we do obviously do a light touch review to ensure that we meet our legal obligations around sort of national minimum wage, etc. But there hasn't been a fundamental review for some time, so it's important we take that opportunity opportunity to do that now. The question 3 around TUPE, clearly what we're doing now, we need to be really mindful of our legislative responsibilities to our staff, and TUPE protection for those staff that transferred from district councils into Somerset Council doesn't have an expiry date. So their terms and conditions and their pay structure are protected and will continue to be protected going forward. What we'll be looking at as a local authority, though, is in terms of having a new contract of employment for our staff, we're hoping to have a compelling proposition that would encourage and incentivise trade unions to consider a collective agreement with us that would seek to ensure that all contracts going forward were sort of more in line with what we believe we need to have as council to attract and retain our staff. Now, if we can't get a collective agreement, there may be other avenues we can follow. So we can speak to staff around whether they would be individually prepared to accept new contracts of employment. But our preference is clearly to do this through consultation and negotiation and have a collective agreement. However, any changes are not going to be directly associated with the transfer of our staff into Somerset Council. It's important that we recognise that 2.5 years down the line, or when we go to implement this programme in 2027, there are a whole series of different circumstances that this council is addressing, not least its financial challenges, and we need to ensure that we have a compelling contract of employment for our staff and for new people joining the council in the future, but not directly associated with the transfer that happened in 2023.
Thank you. And then I'd like to go to our Section 1541 officer, Clive Heafy, for your question on affordability.
Thank you, Councillor Wakefield. And doing this work is critical work to do for the council, and in some ways not really a question of affordability. One thing that's true is that we need to attract and retain the right quality of people in the organisation that are going to be able to deliver high quality services to our residents and give them the best that they possibly can. And that's not happening at the moment because we know of differences in pay and grading, and we know of pockets around the organisation and why so many people are on market related supplements at the moment. So that situation we know has to change. There's a risk management dimension to this as well. We need to make sure that we protect the organisation in terms of equal pay claims. Councillor Rigby has correctly identified a number, well, a council, but there are a number of councils and private sector bodies currently going through equal pay, and that's a matter of equality, making sure that people whose jobs are a similar size are paid the same amount or similar amount within a pay banding. So we have a legal duty to do that, and we have to do it for that reason. But inevitably, there's also the affordability question, and long term, we have to look then at how many people we can afford to pay, at what level within an affordable pay bill, and that will remain a challenge for us. We're going to do substantial pay modelling, which you will see in due course. You'll get to see lots of that pay modelling, and we'll look at that affordability balance. But it is a tightrope we're walking between paying the right levels to attract the right number of people and how many people we actually have at the end of the day to do the work, and the link then to transformation and how we use things like technology then to be able to make sure we take some of the strain of the more manual work. So it's a complex answer to a question, I'm afraid, but absolutely essential in my view that we do this work.
Thank you very much. And then I have Federica Smith-Roberts. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I support us looking to do this because if I've heard correctly, it was 2004 when the last pay review was done. So that's 20 odd years ago. So it feels like we should have been doing it far, in that interim period, probably around, a decade ago. So when looking at this, I think for me, it's around how we explain this to the general public as to why we're doing it. I've seen lots of noise on social media around us spending £3 million to sort out our own problem. And I'm wondering if there's like a frequently asked questions or something that we can pull together that explains this very simply as to the need as to why we are doing this. I'm also intrigued as to whether or not, I know you don't have a crystal ball, Dawn, but the fact it says from April 2027 to September 2027, is there anything that could do to make that closer to April than September? Because I'm guessing that would then feed into us doing the budget for the following year. So the closer that we get to that September date, would I imagine put more pressure on budget setting for the following year when we know outcomes on pay? I'm not sure if that's the case, but I'd be intrigued to know if there is anything we can do to do it quicker and get to that April date.
Dawn, could I come to you for that question?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your question. The simple answer is yes, we are going to do everything possible to try and hit April 2027 as an implementation date for the pay and grading element of this review. There are certain things not in our gift in the project plan, and I need to be quite open about those. When you have a look in the full business case, we have attached for you that high level project plan that will show you all the key milestones, and you'll see that after this year, which is like the vast bulk of the work that has to be put in place, particularly around sort of like the job evaluation elements and looking at the role profiles. Once we've actually completed all the work and we've done a pay modelling exercise, we have a period where we do need to consult and also negotiate a collective agreement with the trade unions. The trade unions will want to ballot their members on any changes that we are proposing to our pay and grading structure and any other changes that we might propose to our wider terms and conditions of employment for our staff. That can be quite an elongated process, and as much as we are going to be working extremely closely with the trade unions, and they also intend to work with us at pace throughout this programme, it's one of those things that I'm sure that you'll have experience elsewhere of seeing that that element of actually working to get an agreement through that process can take a lot longer than we would like. So if everything goes to plan, then we will be looking at April. If we hit any disputes with the trade unions over this period of time as a consequence of doing this piece of work, then the timescales could be elongated. So I think that's really probably the most I can say. I don't know, Nicola, whether there's anything else you want to add to that.
No, I'd agree that's the sort of biggest unknown, and the experience of other councils sort of tells us that's the case. But as Dawn has said, we're working really closely with the trade unions. We've got a joint working group already that is set up, and we're looking at sort of each of the elements of the project as they're arising. So we remain hopeful, and we'll do everything we can to sort of push that through as quickly as we're able to.
Okay, thank you very much. Do I have any more questions from lead members? Any lead member online or associate lead member online? So I'm not seeing any hands up, so I'll go to the room. So I have Councillor Sue Osborne.
Thank you, Councillor Leishon. I do support this programme. I know not all my colleagues do, but I do, for basically the reasons that have been covered. The risk of equal value claims as well as equal pay claims are quite significant, and we know that if you lose those, you're talking several £1 million. To build a sustainable council, you also need a sustainable leadership team, and a revolving doors of interims is not going to deliver that. So if this solves this problem by making us a more attractive place to live and work, then that has got to be to the good. So I do endorse this, but I do feel that the communication needs to be better, perhaps in plain English, because I do get asked a lot about this. We're spending £3 million on pay. As soon as you say pay, grading and put millions in, people see trotters in the trough. This is not the case here. We do need stability, and this is the way to get that. And you start to explain the outline of equal value cases and what they cost. People very soon realise, but there does need to be better communication around that. Finally, I do have a quick question. Now, Councillor Rigby mentioned this continuing authority of Somerset County Council and its pay and review, but I'm curious to know when the districts did their last pay and review grades, because those would be the systems and the schemes that would all come together in 2022. So it seems a little unfair to highlight the county when the districts would also be doing or not doing their similar pay and grading schemes. Thank you.
Thank you. So what districts did and didn't do is still relevant because of TUPE, of course. I think Councillor Mike Rigby wanted to come back in on this question.
Yes, thanks, Liz. I was just going to make the point, I think, as you were about to there, that it's not really relevant what the districts did because they don't exist anymore, and neither do their terms and conditions, but the county councils do. I know from Somerset West and Taunton's point of view, because it was we were forced into the world's shortest local government reorganisation with the creation of that council. It was done at that point, so that was fairly recent, but frankly, it doesn't really make any difference. The point is, this council is based on Somerset County Council as the continuing authority, so that's the only bit that really matters. I was just going to say, in response to Councillor Butt-Phillip's earlier comment, I can explain a little bit about how the process of spaghettification works at the event horizon of a black hole, if anyone's interested.
Too onerous,
Well,
Councillor Rigby.
Okay,
Take that one offline.
I will
please.
just add, Councillor Ashton, that I once at a party spent 10 minutes explaining to a woman various constellations in the sky, and it turned out that she not only had a PhD in astrophysics, she was the astronomy editor of Nature magazine, which I think awarded me the gold medal in the Mansplaining Olympics.
Not surprised. So your points are really interesting, Councillor Osborne, because as we've gone through LGR quite recently and other councils are heading towards it, these complexities about terms and conditions, pay and grading are often not understood by members until they get to the far side of vesting day, and the implications are not properly understood. So I think the districts, I can't speak for all of them, but looking at where we are at the moment and how people have TUPE'd across with T's and C's and pay and grading, and we have seen some of that in the early days of the council when there were redundancy packages, and we saw that at full council. I think we do understand it much better now. With just an 11-month run up from election to vesting, and with just no more than a year really before that, I don't think councils have anywhere near enough time to prepare for vesting. But that is another subject for debate on another time. So if you'd like to come back with one more point, Councillor Osborne.
I just sincerely hope that you are passing those points on to government, as it is inflicting unitarisation on an awful lot of councils, and this is something I don't believe has necessarily been thought through, and we're looking at elections next year for some of those unitaries. That would be my point on that, but please could we have a very clear fact sheet on this subject for members that they can use when they are talking within their communities. I think that's really important because it is a complex subject, and the consequences of getting it wrong, as we know, are rather high and potentially unaffordable.
Thank you. We've taken that on board, and Councillor Smith-Roberts had already mentioned the possibility of an FAQ approach. You'll recall that I said Councillor Bill Revans and Duncan Sharkey at an LGA event. That's exactly what they're doing there. And I see, if you look to your side or behind you, you will see that Councillor Revans is joining us now to tell us exactly why they are at that event.
Thank you so much, Liz, and thank you for stepping in to chair the meeting. Mr. Duncan Sharkey and myself have been doing a plenary session for Local Government Association peers, and these topics precisely have featured in our advice to colleagues in the Local Government Association who go and speak to A, government ministers, but B, the councillors that have been going through this. And believe me that both Duncan and I have been in demand for our advice and contribution from other councils. So Councillor Osborne, I'm sure, will be reassured that we are working hard on that with our friends and colleagues across the local government sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bill, and safe journey home when you finish there. So I had Councillor Rodriguez. Diego, you had a question?
Yes, Chair. Just two questions from me. First one, just some clarification. Am I right in thinking and understanding that this programme, whilst yes, it may mean increased pay grades or pay packages, but it also could mean potentially reduced pay grades or pay packages as well, not necessarily just one in one direction. And a couple of things. We know that this authority has spent over £33 million in agency staff since vesting day, and that's still rising. And on the current day, we've got about 800 current vacancies in the authority, and that's not really budged at all this year. And I'm wondering, as part of this process, has any modelling been done to say that, or any expectation that implementing this particular pay and reward programme means that we should spend X amount less on agency staff, or we should be able to reduce the vacancy rate by X amount as well? Just trying to think if that's been part of any thinking done there, because I appreciate that yes, this is about ensuring that those that work for the authority are paid well, but it's also about ensuring that the pay that we have attracts good talent to fill those roles and help the authority move forward as well. And just finally, in terms of the HR committee oversight, that's really good to hear. There's nothing in the document, and perhaps it's going on a forward plan, about when exactly this will go to HR oversight committee, but perhaps you're not ready to share that yet, but it would be useful to know if that is.
Okay, Dawn, could I go to you on the modelling point, and then obviously the HR committee will have its own work programme for future meetings. We're not talking about something that's going to take a matter of months, are we? We're talking longer term, and actually the HR committee now, no longer being the HR policy committee as it used to be, has, in my view, a wider range, and I find that very welcome. So if I could go to Dawn first, please, on modelling.
Thank you, Chair. And maybe just, if I can, just before I touch on the modelling question, you asked the question, Councillor, around could the outcome be that there could be pay reductions for some staff? Clearly, that's something we want to avoid, but we couldn't guarantee that that wouldn't be an outcome. It will depend on the final pay and grading structure that we can afford to implement for our workforce. So there will be a significant amount of modelling and equality impact assessments done throughout this programme to try and minimise any negative impact on our workforce, because that would obviously counter what we're trying to achieve. And we do have some pay protection policies that we would be able to explain nearer the time as well, in terms of how we would handle that situation in the event of that being an outcome. I think it's really important that we're really clear that there are two elements to this project. There is the sorting of the job evaluation methodology, and there is also the modelling of a brand new pay and grading structure. So the job evaluation methodology will take every role in the organisation and score it. So there'll be a hierarchy of jobs, and we'll be able to compare jobs across the organisation, and then we apply those scores to a new pay and grading structure, and that will determine what the impact will be against the jobs. So not against the people, but against the roles and the role profiles that have been evaluated. So but I hope that answers that first query that you raised. But our aim is to minimise any negative impact on our staff, because that would counter, I guess, the overarching aims of the programme. Your second question on modelling, and in particular, the modelling around agency staff, etc. The first thing I'd want to say on this is that our current agency staff are funded from existing salary budgets. The majority of our departments don't hold any agency budgets anymore. So what we'd be looking at is a cost reduction rather than a budget saving. So if, for example, we are spending in the region of 200 million a year on our council's pay bill, then if we are paying say 10 or 12 million of that towards agency staff, that's inclusive of that pay bill. It is an addition to that pay bill. What we want to do is try and convert a big proportion of our current agency spend onto our permanent establishment, which I think is what everybody would like to see, and that is more cost efficient and it will give us greater capacity, because obviously what we're having to do at the moment is hold a number of vacancies on our establishment in order to fund some of the more expensive interim consultant and agency staff that we need within the organisation. However, it's always going to be imperative that we have a contingent workforce. Having a flexible workforce where we can bring in skills and capacity and capability whenever we need to, particularly through a period of transformation, is going to continue being absolutely critical for Somerset Council, but we want to get that balance absolutely right, and we're working really hard to ensure that we are supporting our permanent establishment as much as we can. So in terms of the modelling that's done, we now have some much more accurate data on our workforce compared to 2.5 years ago after vesting day. We are also really working hard on managing our establishment and controlling our establishment, and that's still a work in progress. We're still very conscious that we need to cleanse our data and to make sure that the vacancy information on our workforce profile reports is accurate. And clearly it's higher than we would like to have it at the moment, because it is funding some of the agency pressures that we have in the organisation. So yes, we have the data. In terms of the modelling, that will be part of the programme over the next 12 months. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think this has been a really interesting item, and I think for all of us as members, we keep learning, and that includes in scrutiny as well, and it will include an HR committee chaired by Councillor Butt-Phillip. Did you want to come in at this point, and can you make the point that every member is welcome at HR committee?
Well, I think you've already made it, Chair, but no, I did want to talk about the HR committee, just to say I haven't got a date for when we'll be bringing the first update to HR committee, but we will make sure to get that onto the forward plan for HR committee as soon as we can, and get a date identified. So we will do that. And as Councillor Leishon says, every member is welcome at the HR committee. It's a slightly unusual committee, not being a scrutiny committee, but it actually makes some decisions. But that's all very rewarding, and I'd encourage people to come and participate in our deliberations.
Thank you very much. So I'm not seeing any more questions in the room, so I'm now going to page 40 where the recommendations are. It's recommended that executive agrees, 1, to endorse the approach to the pay and reward programme as outlined in the full business case. And secondly, that member oversight of the pay and reward programme be through the HR committee. So I'm looking for the proposer, which...
And news, in addition to proposing news just in, we're hoping to bring a report to the January meeting of the HR committee.
Excellent. No sooner said than done. So proposed by Councillor Butt-Phillip and a seconder, Councillor Heather Shearer. All those in favour, please. That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. So thank you to the colleague who reminded me that I'd managed to miss agenda item 6 and went past that. So I'll come back to that at a later stage. That is a paper for noting the forward plan. So we're going now to agenda item 8. This is to approve for publication the Education Places Strategy for Somerset 2025. This is a piece of work that I think forms part of our social history as a county, actually. Really interesting. So I will ask first Councillor Heather Shearer to introduce, and then Heather will pass to Phil Curd at the appropriate time. Heather.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Let me just move this a bit closer. Yes, thank you for introducing that, or allowing me to. We've been talking about this for some time, but actually I just want to start by saying that education place planning, which is what this subject's about, is really quite a challenging thing. It always is a challenging thing. And you know, I know Phil could have lots more information. There's lots more information in the papers about we still have the lowest birth rate in 20 years, but we're also seeing pressures where people are coming into our area and bringing their children, thankfully, with them. Otherwise, the other part of me will get very cross. They left them behind. But we have this very kind of volatile situation at the moment, which we have to keep tracking where our children are and how many we have. So the Education Places strategy for Somerset that's been brought to you today, it's been produced to really assist with bringing into one place the principles that we're working on. So, for instance, it should include the principles that underpin the decision making with regard to the delivery of our state maintained education, also the principles of education place planning, so how we do it, the latest population forecasts, and also the potential strategies that we have put in place to address both shortfalls and surplus places across Somerset. I often joke that we've probably got exactly the right number of places for all of our children, but they're not always in the right places. The kids are in exactly the right place, but getting to the right place is really hard. It also wants to underline something which I think perhaps doesn't come out in the cover report very well, but does in the policy, our local first policy. On page 93 or page 5 of the actual addendum, appendix, it's really important, and it says there why local first is good. It's good for the council, it's good for children, most importantly, it's good for communities and better for schools. So there's all kinds of reasons why it's a good thing to do. So it hasn't been done since about 2019, I think, the last time. So this one is coming to you now, and will also be reviewed. It'll be updated and published annually in May of each year, and also the summaries, which track the actual data place by place, is something that we're undertaking to do every sort of 6 months or so. But there's real ambitions from Phil and the team to make those live and interrogatable, because they do change day on day, week on week through the year. We take them every kind of 6 months, twice a year, as a snapshot in time, but we want to make sure they're more accessible. And I think the last thing I'll say before I hand over for Phil to fill in any gaps that I might have made obviously this paper came to scrutiny on the 20th of October. It was very much supported, and people, I was there, so they appreciated hearing it. And the only thing they made recommendation wise that we might, on publication, include an appendix to the policy, which is a kind of almost like a policy on a page style format, which just brings forward on one page what we're trying to do. Because it is a complex thing, and as you read the strategy, it's quite a complex strategy, and the work that the officers have to do is not straightforward. So I'll hand over to Phil to add anything else you might want to be saying about the paper before we take any questions.
Hand over to Phil Kurd, please. Phil, do you mind just giving your job title? I would, if my eyesight was a bit better, I'd do it for you, but I can't. So if you could, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Phil Kurd, Head of Education Places, Somerset Council. Heather hasn't given me much to fill in, really. It was quite a comprehensive introduction. But I will say that, as Heather set out, we haven't done this since 2019. And it was previously the School Place Planning Infrastructure Growth Plan. Now there are two significant changes. For the first time, we are bringing all education sufficiency into one document, so early years, mainstream school place planning, and our specialist place planning. But also in the previous iteration of this document, we spoke purely about growth, because at that time we had a bulge of pupils working its way through our system. This policy focuses around demand, acknowledging that demand can go both up and down. So this policy talks about where we have to grow, but also where we may have to shrink and repurpose education facilities to meet different types of need. And also, as Heather set out, you will see, or you might not see, but there are lots and lots of appendices which take an enormous amount of officer time to publish. It is our intention to publish those on a 6 monthly basis, so using the most up-to-date information in the short term, but in the medium term, we are looking to turn all of those appendices into a live Power BI dashboard, so the data is automated and it takes all of that stress away from a human team. Thank you.
Excellent. It's good to hear about the dashboard approach. Could I ask you, presuming we get through this today and it's approved, could I ask you to lodge it with the South West Heritage Trust? Because I do genuinely think it's an interesting document with regard to the social history of Somerset. And I think in 20 and 50 years' time, something like this will be really important in explaining how population has changed in different parts of the county and the country. So thank you very much, Phil. So I'm going to colleagues to see if I have any questions. So I'll go to Sarah Wakefield first and then Federica Smith-Roberts.
Thank you, and thank you for this report. I think obviously it's a truism to say enough places is key. Obviously, we need enough places in the county for our children, and I think it's an unenviable task with so many. I think I'd call them known unknowns actually, as opposed to unknown. I think they're known. I mean, we just don't know. We can make forecasts. There are so many variables. We know there are going to be a certain amount of children, but there could be changes into that population. And what we have seen nationally is falling rolls in certain areas, and I think the birth rate falling over many years. So it's extremely difficult. So I'm really pleased to see that we've got a strategy, and I really hope that we can continue with that work and that it works out on an annual basis. And obviously, until you get close to that year, that cohort moving school or coming into school for the first time, you don't really know who you're going to have. So I just wanted to make that clear, because it seems it's such a difficult task. My question is about educating children close to home, which is part of our policy of having catchment areas, which to some people are slightly odd shapes as they reach out of town centres where the schools tend to be. If we do end up with extra room in some schools because of the population movement or the lack of growth, can they be facilities that could be used for more SEND in schools? Because that's what we need, isn't it? We need to put more SEND pupils in our local schools if they are suitable for that, if it's the right thing for them. I know we've been doing that. I just wondered if that might be another opportunity.
Heather, will you pick that one up?
I'll give it a go, and you can mark my homework, which is what Phil often does. No, absolutely right. Yes, we do find ourselves with schools which do have space in them, and some of our special education needs units have been able to take advantage of that kind of space. But of course, but we can't be too simplistic, because of course one of the issues is about having the right type of provision in the right place. So it's not as simple as saying, oh, that school's empty over there, we'll stick a new special school in there, or we'll stick one of those in there, because you're absolutely right. That complexity of determining what you need where is really tricky. But yes, we're looking at every opportunity to leverage space, so which allows us then to have the right teachers in that space and the right approach in that space, usually for smaller classrooms, like I like to think of the SEND units as SEN units are inclusive classrooms, but they could be for things like an entire satellite, an entire sort of satellite of a special school option on a site, if we have that kind of space. Anything to add on that one, Phil?
Yeah, sorry, just to add, the falling roles and emerging latent physical capacity in our secondary schools is a cornerstone of our SEN unit strategy going forward. And by looking at those projected pupil numbers and anticipating the space becoming available, we are already having conversations in advance of those falling numbers with schools, just to line them up. And Nikki will know from email exchanges this morning that having more SEN units at secondary level, where the bulk of our INMS spend is a really crucial part of our strategy. Now we're waiting for the bulge to work its way through in some areas. In other areas, particularly down the M5 corridor, we're not likely to have any real latent capacity in our secondary schools, if ever. But in other areas like Wincanton in West Somerset and in the north of the county, and in places like Hewish Episcopi, which is a big secondary school, there is emerging capacity, and we're having those conversations to line up SEN units as quickly as we can get in.
Thank you very much. So next to Federica Smith-Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. I find this a really interesting document, and it's really good to see like a generic overview, and I think it's really good for those of our residents who want to take an interest. And interestingly, going to South West Heritage Trust, that kind of social element of what does Somerset look like at this moment in time. It's a really well presented communication. For me, Phil, I think the question is when do we think that we'll get the draft report for early years places? Do we have kind of a timeline there about looking at the forecasts? I think whether it's anecdotal evidence or anything, my understanding is that there aren't enough places, maybe that's a national picture, for the fact where the government has brought in the extra funding. So trying to find nursery places for children of that age is difficult. That might not be Somerset, but that seems to be the national picture that I kind of pick up in different parenting groups that I'm in, as well as the fact that actually the government funded places don't actually cover the cost of what the nurseries need to cover. So it would be interesting to note, what does that Somerset picture look like, and are we looking at places to attach to existing schools, so that there's almost like a feeder element that then goes through into primary schools where there are places, a bit like you said, I think with the SEN units for secondary schools where they've got places. Does that then help keep a community together and create a cohesive community around that school network?
Thank you. I will come back to you with an answer on the early years. So it's called the Childcare Sufficiency Assessment. Now, in my head, I think we've recently published one, but I will confirm that to you and provide a copy if it is available. In terms of early years and whether we are sufficient or not, it's quite a difficult thing to project. So if we looked purely at numbers, we would say that we probably are sufficient in early years places, but what we acknowledge within the early years system, which is largely different to the school age system, parents will look for childcare closer to their place of work rather than their place of residence. Because if you were having to drop your child off in childcare and then drive an hour to work and drive an hour home, actually that's 2 hours of childcare you're having to pay for, which you wouldn't do if you were dropping your child closer to work. So what we do have some very specific early years hotspots where we know that the demand is outstripping supply, because they are the places that our community go into work, and people are looking for early years places in our big urban locations because it's convenient for them rather than having provision closer to home.
Thank you. Really interesting. I can see that we have the Chair of Children and Family Scrutiny online, Councillor Lee Redman. We've got the scrutiny comments and recommendations that were covered by Heather earlier, and they are on page 84 of the ModGov pack. I'd like to bring Lee Redman in at this stage. Lee, do you have questions, or are you bringing us any further information from scrutiny?
No, Chair, thank you. First of all, thank you, Heather, for reiterating the point about the complex nature of the process. The reason I'm coming in, Chair, really is that very often, as Chair of our scrutiny body, I get contact from lots of members asking about placements, places for the school in their different constituents in schools. And I often signpost to this policy because this is the one that's relevant to it, and particularly in relation to the graphs that are set out in the things like, as Phil has already indicated, the birth rate on page 15. But the other bit that's relevant is obviously the houses that are completed on page 10, I think it is, because we can make the best calculations as possible, but it's down to developers when they start completing the homes. So some of our calculations, some of the hard work that officers put in is sometimes lost because of things outside of our control. But I think the paper is really helpful in the fact that we can signpost fellow councillors to it so that they can explain to their constituents what's going on, which is why we specifically asked for the policy on a page. Very often, a lot of our time as councillors is spent responding to constituents who are having issues where their child's not been accepted for a reason and stuff like that. And the policy would be helpful in making that clear. But also just to highlight a couple of very quick points, Chair. Obviously, Somerset's changing very rapidly with lots of big employers coming to the area. The transient nature of workers is having an impact as well, because we don't always know when other children are being brought into the area, sometimes until it's too late. So that's an important point to there. And one final one, Chair. I think when we talk about on page 20, requested contributions from developers, I think it's a point we need to be making more. Developers, it's fine, we welcome the homes that are being built, but we need to put as much pressure on developers to support us in the building of new schools, to ensure that places are available. So it's a matter of ensuring that as well as the homes that they're building the services and everything else that's there to it. And that was a point that was made at scrutiny. One final point, Chair. I think this report is amazing. I think it puts into place lots of information that will be helpful for members. And I think a point that came out of our committee was very clear in that we need to commend our officers for the work they've done in bringing this together. This strategy in itself is going to be really helpful. And I think the more we can make it known to the other all 110 members of this council, as well as the members of the public, will help clarify some of the complicated systems that have been happening. So, Chair, thank you for the opportunity to speak, and thank you to officers, please.
Thank you. I think your thank you is certainly well placed. Back to Heather.
Thank you, and thank you, Lee. I appreciate that. I try to thank the officers all the time, but it's really good to hear it, and certainly in a public meeting. So thank you for that one. I just wanted to say that while you were speaking, I absolutely agree with you. The complexity is really important. I did just want to say that we in the meantime as well, I did actually find that back in June 2025, we did actually publish through a members briefing document the childcare sufficiency report for 2024. So that is actually on our website. If Phil's memory was right, we have published the 2024 one, which is there. But yeah, I just want to say thank you to the support from scrutiny, because that has been really helpful, and definitely I think keeping that clarity. And the second subject here where we talked about having a kind of Q&A or a really simple descriptor for something, and I think that's really important. Not to do down the complexity, Phil, because the complexity is really hard. The other one, picking up Lee's point as well, forgive me, I was having a bit of a mind meld there. The other thing that Phil was mentioning was how important it is that around Section 106s and planning and place planning and so on, that we do take into account what we need. And I have been assured, and it's questions I'm playing the local plan bingo. I want every meeting I'm in, I talk about the local plan. And I know that Phil is working, and Phil's team are working alongside colleagues in property and other and planning and so on the local plan. But I think I don't know if Phil wants anything more about the local plan or about that infrastructure point, because it's really important.
Thank you, Heather. Yeah, as much as this as a reference point for parents and councillors, it's very much for developers as well. So we can be really clear for the rationale of our financial requests relating to education infrastructure. And just in response to Lee passing on his thanks to officers, it would be remiss of me not to mention colleagues in business intelligence, planning and property who helped co-produce this document. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. As I say, I do think it is both fascinating of its time and needs to be a part of our history in time. So let's go. Anybody online? Anybody else online with questions? Anybody else in the room with questions? No further questions. So in that case, then I'm going to the recommendations that are on page 81 of the agenda reports pack. And the recommendations for executive are to approve for publication the Education Places Strategy for Somerset 2025, and then approve the publication of the Education Places Strategy for Somerset, usually in May of each year from 2026 onwards, and approves the publication of updated area summaries biannually, not biennially, biannually, usually in May and October of each year. So I'm looking for the proposer there, Councillor Shearer, seconder, Councillor Wakefield, and all those in favour, please. So that is approved. Thank you very much. So we'll move now, stay where you are, if you will, please, Phil. We have got, I think it's 3 papers, but we will have a comfort break before the third one. So we're moving to agenda item 9, consolidation of Somerset pupil referral units. So back to you, Heather, for an introduction.
Thank you very much, and thanks, Phil, for being here for this one too. So I just want to introduce this paper, which is about our pupil referral units and proposal we have for it. I think to say in what's behind this is we want to achieve a greater level of consistency of what we describe as alternative provision services. That's education that's not provided at schools, mainstream schools. So we want to get this greater level of consistency around the provision that we have delivered through the pupil referral units. And so we undertook a statutory consultation during July on proposals to amalgamate the 4 existing PRUs into 2. I do want to underline that this is being driven by improving outcomes. It's not, it should be cost neutral. It's not a savings per proposal at all. And that point was recognised again by scrutiny on the 20th of October. The focus has to be around improving the outcomes. So just to kind of we skittle through this one and is to say, I know you're all aware, but the pupil referral units are schools that cater for the needs of a range of people with SEND. So they can be children who've been permanently excluded from mainstream, at risk of permanent exclusion, experience emotional or behavioural difficulties, or have a medical condition that makes mainstream school unsuitable for them. So it's really important that these schools work as well as they can. So our proposal is to amalgamate those existing 4 into 2, with each one of them, each of the 2 responsible for the east and the west of the whole Somerset area, or effective from the 1st of April. And I think the point again to underline here, and I know my colleagues have been anxious about it, as have some parents and as have some people who are responding to the consultation, is that there's when you want to you can't just amalgamate PRUs. They are you have to actually physically close one and make it join another if you wanted to make 2 PRUs into one. And so this is a technical document we had to go out with to say we have to consult to say we'd like to make this change. So no schools will change, will actually close. There are 4 PRUs. I think 3 out of the 4 are multi-site anyway, and all of those sites will continue. So there won't be any, children won't be going to different places as a result of this, though we hope they'll get better outcomes from going where they're going. So I think that's the main thing to say on that one. The other things to point out, and Phil will say more about this, but the whole idea would be that each of the 2 PRUs would have a head teacher of their own, if you like, but they'd be entering into partnership agreements with each other. So we make sure that all of the provision across the county is actually as consistent and as high quality as we can get it. And that's the intention. In order to manage the 2 of them, there's also the partnership agreement would also just determine how we'd have this head teacher function. So not like a 3rd head teacher above, but to have a proper partnership that actually ensures that those 2 work as well as possible across the place. And it's a bit of an odd thing because a head teacher function, you think of a person, but this is all of the things that a head teacher function would actually bring. And that's done by a partnership of people, not just one singular person or one singular trust. We'd have people working together to achieve that. So it is a little bit complex, but actually, if we're able to say yes to this, which I hope we do, agree to this, you won't see any change in the beginning because all of those schools will continue. But over time, we'll be able to get the performance improved and the outcomes better. Phil, what have I missed out?
Not much, Heather. Thank you. Another comprehensive introduction. Yeah. So this is a technical housekeeping exercise. Essentially, it also wards off the risk of a direct academy order of South Somerset Partnership School, which is based in Yeovil, which would be detrimental to our pupil referral unit system in terms of improving consistency and quality for the young children accessing our pupil referral units, generally as a result of our Section 19 statutory duty. And if you cast your mind back to the 1st of October, we brought the Section 19 policy to you for sign off. That again is a cornerstone of our high needs deficit management plan. Heather spoke briefly about the partnership agreement, which we have started to shape with the management committees of the existing pupil referral units, and that will be a key instrument in the consistency and quality improvement of our PRUs, because a historic challenge in those 4 PRUs is that they are relatively small schools working in isolation and not necessarily with each other. So by having the partnership agreement, by pooling their resources, by introducing a 3rd party with its own central functions and support systems, we're hoping to have a much more coherent and cohesive PRU offer across the county. And then looking at the 26-27 academic year, making sure those PRUs are reaching across the partnership areas in West Somerset and Frome, and making sure those communities, the children and their families, are getting the same support as well.
Thank you. Around the room for lead members with questions. I've got first Richard Wilkins.
Thank you, Phil, Heather. I think you've kind of answered my question really, but I just want, in very layman's terms, how operationally this will improve outcomes as opposed to staying with the status quo. I think you have made a stab of explaining that, but I just think we need a very clear definition of where we are at the moment, what this does that changes outcomes for the pupils.
Phil, just before you come in, can I ask you to explain, because I think I've heard you say that we could not stay with the status quo. If my understanding is correct, can you kind of clarify that for us, please, as part of Richard's question?
Of course. So the status quo can't continue because South Somerset Partnership School, which had an inadequate Ofsted judgment, has been issued with a direct academy order. If we do nothing, that PRU will academise and we will lose control of a pupil referral unit, which is not a helpful thing to have, and it will actually make our pupil referral system even more inconsistent. So what we have done is look to address that direct academy order by technically closing that school and merging it with Tor School, but then also doing the same thing with Taunton Partnership College and merging that with the Bridge School, which is located currently in Bridgewater and surrounding villages. So what we have at the moment are 4 relatively small schools working in isolation of each other with limited central resource, and that has resulted in some fairly inconsistent outcomes, and some of those outcomes are not particularly good, and attendance is a perennial challenge in our pupil referral units. We do have examples of really good practice. So if we look at the Bridge School in Sedgemoor, they have an existing partnership with the Polden Bower Federation, and they share curriculum, they share CPD, they have safeguarding advice, they have attendance leads. So by pooling their resources, suddenly they start upskilling both of the provisions. What we are aiming to do through the partnership agreement is replicate that type of arrangement, but across the county. So specifically what will help to improve our PRUs, so a shared curriculum, shared CPD, support for the head teachers to develop them as leaders, support for the management committees to develop them as decision makers, support for teachers in the settings to develop them as professionals, lesson observations, etc., dedicated support around safeguarding, dedicated support around attendance, dedicated support around careers, etc., because we know that the children accessing our PRUs tend to populate our NEET cohort and don't transition into post-16. So this is essentially uplifting the whole of our pupil referral unit game and saving money in our Section 19 duties as well, but by concentrating our resource on teaching and learning for the benefit of our children.
Thank you. I'm sure you'll be satisfied with that answer. It's a really good answer.
It was a very long answer, and yeah, it did address everything, I believe, but in layman's terms, we couldn't carry on going in the direction or with what we've got already, and this addresses issues and brings better results for all the pupils across Somerset, I think is what you were trying to say.
I'm going to Sarah Wakefield. Just to let you know, Councillor Jill Slocum, I have got your name. Thank you. So I'll go to Sarah next.
Yeah, thank you. Just to say, I'm really pleased to have the clarification that we've had in our preparation for this and also in this meeting about the fact that none of the units will close. It's a consolidation, it seems to me. So it's a different idea, but we have a small one in one of my villages, and it's a lovely little school, doesn't have many pupils in it, but I think it's very successful, and it's in a rural location, which is some of these units are. It's helpful in all sorts of ways in the treatment or the teaching that they manage to do in those units. So I'm very pleased to see this, and I would have thought that because if you have a very small number of pupils, it's quite difficult to run it independently. I think it'll be helpful to have people in contact the word I'm trying to think of with others working in cooperation. I think that will be of benefit to all of the people involved in this, and I'm glad to see that there's an element of training involved as well. So I'm really supporting it. Thank you.
Phil, could I ask you to clarify which of the 4 current pupil referral units, the 2 that they'll go down to. But I think Sarah may have been referencing another facility. I'm not sure, but put me right, please.
Thank you, Chair. So the 2 PRUs that will technically close are the Taunton Dean Partnership College, which is based in Taunton, but also includes the Dean Discovery Centre, which is a primary age therapeutic provision just sat up on the hills. It's a former primary school. It has some of our most complex primary age children in the local area sat there, but it will continue to operate, but under the banner of the Bridge School, which we would expect to rename and rebrand as part of an emerging new school, if you like. Then on the other side of the county, Tor School, which is based in Glastonbury, that's our only single site PRU. It will remain open, but it will absorb all of the sites and operations of South Somerset Partnership School, which is based in Yeovil and Chard. And that is the school which is subject to the direct academy order. That is the school we need to close to avoid academisation.
Okay, thanks. And my apologies to Sarah, because I didn't, so I'd call that a satellite, something like that. So, but thank you for that clarification. So in the room, if all lead members are happy, in the room I have Councillor Francis Nicholson and then online Councillor Jill Slocum.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I entirely see the reasons for the proposal and applaud particularly the wish for consistency across the whole of Somerset, and see this as a much better solution than one school disappearing off into something which is differently controlled, and where one would have to say there's no guarantee that any improvement would be made simply by academising. So this is a solution that I support. It does need careful comms, and I know that later in the year or next year, those parts of the county which are not at the moment blessed with any PRU accommodation, but are dealt with in other ways, will be brought in within the policy for the sake of consistency. I'm sure that's good, and I do support that. My question is about the variously called executive head teacher function, and it is once mentioned as executive head teacher. Now, I absolutely understand that PRUs are not allowed to federate, so you can't, there is a problem, we have to solve it. There is probably a lack of capacity here to undertake those sorts of functions, and better to have an agreement with some other body to do it. I am, though, concerned that we're getting to this stage of decision before the huge hard work of working out what that function should be and who it should be and how much of a job it should be and whether it should be led by a person, as I think would be best, because otherwise things can disappear off into different silos. I'm concerned that we're not further down the line with understanding that and clarifying that, and because I fear that without that clarification, we can't be really confident that this will work in the way that we all both want it to and need it to. So I would welcome some reassurance on that.
Yeah, are you happy to pick that up, Phil?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Francis. There is a lot of work to do on the partnership agreement, but we have drafted an initial draft of the partnership agreement, and we have shared that with the management committees, where we've been working in parallel with the management committees on the assumption that this decision will be taken primarily around the HR processes and the appointment of the head teachers. And of course, the partnership agreement is fundamental to how the PRUs will operate in the future. So we have developed a partnership agreement in draft, and within those appendices is a long list service specification, which essentially sets out all of the things that could possibly be in a partnership agreement. And once hopefully the decision is taken today to proceed with the consolidation of the PRUs, we will be working quite quickly and comprehensively with the management committees to iron out exactly what they want in the partnership agreement, as in the service specification, and then we will go and seek that support from relevant organisations, and we will do a short expression of interest exercise. So in theory, it could come from a multi-academy trust, it could come from a local authority federation. There are pros and cons to each, but we need to really work out with our management committees exactly what we want in the partnership agreement. And this will go from executive leadership. So you could have an executive head teacher person and individual, which provides through their organisation a range of support for the two PRU's leadership. So in terms of coaching, mentoring the head teachers, overseeing the curriculum, CPD, quality assurance, etc. But then you could have back office functions, so health and safety, finance, curriculum support, safeguarding support, attendance support. So within the specification appendix of the partnership agreement as is, there is just this enormous list of things that are possible, and we will have to sit down quite quickly and work through that list and agree what the specification will be and go out and seek that support so it's ready in time for April 2026. But I'm confident we've got plenty of time to do that.
Thank you. And just following Councillor Nicholson's question, I just come to you, Heather, to say I'm hearing that this is in the right order with this decision taken today. Are you able to assure us that that is your belief?
Yes, I believe it is, because of the technicality issue that we have to do in order to put this in place. We have to do this bit first, but that doesn't mean it's wholly sequential. The team have been working massively to get around this, because this has also been identified, much like many of the other papers that come forward. This is another integral part to being able to address some of our overspend, some of our inefficiencies around our special educational needs spend. It's part of our deficit management plan. So we've seen it in that context, because this is a key bit of getting our kids back into mainstream school, and also enabling the PRUs to do what their title is, which is to take those children who can't go in and do the work with them and get them back. They're getting really clogged up at the moment with the strange ways people get stuck in there for a long time. We want to give them that chance to do it. But you're right. I think we absolutely have to do the technical bit first before we can even talk about it, because the intricacies of closing schools, you just have to do this bit.
Thank you. So let me go to Councillor Jill Slocum online, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Can you hear me?
Certainly can.
Thank you. I just wanted to say I thank you very much. I did have a question. It doesn't make any sense now because it's been adequately answered. So I thank you for your time, and I wish the officer very well. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. We'll all join you in wishing the officer well, because there have been some really significant pieces of work in children's and education recently, and I think as we are all corporate parents, we should all be equally pleased to see this work coming forward in such good form. So no further questions in the room, so let me go then to page 113, where we have the recommendations, and the executive is asked to A, approve the implementation of the new approach to pupil referral unit provision in Somerset with the aim of improving the quality and consistency of the offer across the county, and to do so, B, approve the expansion of Tor School to include the sites from which South Somerset Partnership School operate, with WEF is with effect from, I think, isn't it? Is that correct? So with effect from the 1st of April 2026, and the closure of SSPS, so Somerset Partnership School, with effect from the 31st of March 2026 to enable consolidation. C, approve the expansion of the Bridge School to include the sites from which Taunton Deane Partnership College, TDPC, operate with effect from the 1st of April 2026, and the closure of Taunton Deane Partnership College from the 31st of March 2026 to enable the proposed consolidation. And then D, approve the production of a partnership agreement which will define and deliver the support and challenge mechanisms required to secure the necessary improvements. So I'm looking for the proposer, Councillor Heather Shearer, and a seconder, Councillor Theo Butt-Philip. All those in favour, please. So that is approved unanimously, and with it go our thanks to you, Phil Curd, and all of your colleagues, because I know just how massive your workload has been recently and how much you are achieving for this council, and particularly for the young people of Somerset. Thank you. So before we go to our comfort break, I'll go back to agenda item 6, if I may, which is the executive forward plan. And there is a link in here to that forward plan. So we are asked to note it. And I ask lead members if you have any points that you wish to bring up from the executive forward plan. So, Councillor Heather Shearer.
There are one or two entries on there with not quite the right person assigned to them.
I'll go to the monitoring officer for that one.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the observation. We've noted those and they've been amended. So we thank officers and services for putting forward items to the forward plan in good order. We just need to make sure that those are done so in a correct way, and that's already been actioned. Thank you, Chair.
And Councillor Federica Smith-Roberts.
Thanks, Liz, for bringing this up. I was just having a look actually at our meeting that's happening in December. That's going to be a long and heavy meeting looking at our December one. So just making sure we probably got lunch boxes and everything with us, because that's the budget meeting, the Sunday parking charges, the council tax reduction scheme. So definitely one for public to be interested in.
And thank you. Alan Jones.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the observation. We've taken steps to extend that meeting so that it's all in members' diaries and clear at this stage, now that we know that all of those items are likely to be confirmed.
Thank you. And I'd just like to point out how pleased I was to see on the forward plan all the items about social housing, not just in the areas where it used to be Homes in Sedgemoor and the HRA, but actually now spreading out across Somerset. I think hugely welcome to see those decisions coming forward. Thank you to everyone who's been working there. So we are asked just to note, so if we're all happy to note, any dissenters, please say no. Otherwise, we will, that will be minuted as having been noted. Thank you. And we're allowed, according to the schedule, a 15-minute comfort break, which is from 11:50, so we're 4 minutes behind. So I'm going to cut you down to 10 minutes because I know there are some important meetings today at 2 o'clock and we must be finished in here by 1:30. So comfort break now. Thank you very much, colleagues. Index in this item. I am hoping that we can go through questions and any debate without straying into that confidential appendix, but I will look to officers to stop us if at any time we are straying that way. So I will go to Councillor Heather Shearer to introduce the third of her papers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just to say, I'm ably assisted in the room by Phil Curd, but also online by Caroline Barnes as well, which is excellent. So I'm hoping, though, this won't be too contentious a conversation. So I'll do a very brief introduction because I'd like to think by now people do know what Homes and Horizons is, so I don't really have to go into depth about it. But just to say, this particular report is asking approval to expand the Homes and Horizons partnership by delivering 3 new homes for children looked after in Somerset. Now, originally we had a kind of an agreement to go up to 10 homes, and we are just sorting out our kind of eighth done and 9th. So we're getting close to our 10 now. But actually, looking at the numbers and looking at the funding, we have got already a kind of an earmarked £1.5 million in capital that we could spend to that, and we have recently been told or sought this and have had the confirmation that the DfE will give us a matching 1.5. Now, with the money that we spent so far, that means we can eke out the that money to give us 11 houses rather than the 10 that we stepped up to originally. It's also just to say that under procurement rules, of course, we have got, it is a partnership as a contract, and we have permission, if you like, to spend a certain amount of money within that framework and within that contract. But within the procurement rules, we can actually stray by about 10%, but no more in that regard. So I have been assured that spending that 1.5 and the DfE's 1.5 and getting an 11th house, not stopping at 10, does not put us foul of our procurement rule regulations. So it's really just so that we can continue this. It's all about improving outcomes for children, our children, and also ensuring that we can bring more children back into the county, fewer children going into very high cost placements, very often hundreds of miles from here. So the more time we can bring them locally, it's really good. And that the three-way partnership that we have with the Homes and Horizons partnership, where we all three of us lean heavily into and share risk around, that's ourselves, our health partners in CAMHS, children, adolescents mental health service, and also the Shaw Trust, who bring a lot of the experience and skills to the party. So it's really just an ask that we can we get the go ahead to spend that additional money, or that money using the additional funds from the DfE. Again, I don't know whether Caroline or Phil in the room wants to say anything, but I think it's quite a simple one, I'm hoping, but I'm glad I've got them there for questions.
Phil, do you want to take anything, or Caroline online? Is there anything you wish to add to Heather's introduction?
Thanks, Chair. Caroline can jump in. She's very welcome to. But just to reiterate Heather's points, this is not new borrowing. This is previously approved borrowing, and because of match funding from the DfE, we've been able to expand this programme from 8 homes originally to 11 homes, and a key outcome will be bringing Somerset's children back into Somerset, and we don't also have that cost of care provision in those other local authorities, but often where those children are residing in other LAs, we are charged an extortionate amount for their education, which is costed to the high needs budget. So by having Somerset children back in their home county, we will be able to find them state maintained education provision here and reduce that pressure on the high needs budget as well.
Heather?
And the only other thing to say as well is, as well as the educational benefit and keeping more likely to be able to keep our children in school, which has a real protective factor, which is hard to do when you're far away. Of course, what you're trying to do is get those children, wherever possible, to reunify with their original families or with their wider families. And again, when you're working across hundreds of miles, that makes that kind of thing really hard. So it should improve reunification, it should improve educational outcomes as well.
I can see that Caroline Barnes has unmuted. Caroline, is there anything you wish to add at this stage?
Morning all. Just to really reiterate the significant improved outcomes for the children that are in the service, and the evidence that we have for that as well, and how important that is, alongside obviously the financial benefits of the model.
Okay, thank you very much, Caroline and Phil. And I'd like to take this opportunity to pay tribute to predecessor lead members, cabinet members for children and families, Councillor Francis Nicholson and Councillor Tessa Munt, for the work that you have done, Francis, with starting this programme. And it's really interesting to look back and see those key decisions from June and October 2021. It's the first time I flicked through the papers and saw the County Council logo. Couldn't quite work it out. But thank you, because I know how important this programme has been from the day you first started working on it. And then Tessa Munt continued as lead member, and then Heather has taken over. And it's really good to see it continuing and extending, hopefully now to 11 homes. So colleagues, lead members, so I've got Federica Smith-Roberts, then Sarah Wakefield. Ed?
Thank you, Chair. Fully support this. This is seems to be a really positive thing that we are doing in relation to bringing children back into not just the county, but in those kind of smaller home environments that from looking at what the outcomes and what we've heard today is a really positive experience. What I'd like to see, and obviously not for today, and it might be that I just need to attend children's scrutiny, is there any more detail in relation to those outcomes and seeing not just the financial benefits, but the real kind of lived experience and outcomes for those children in particular. I know we probably can't give personal details, obviously, of them, but just understanding it would be really good.
No, thank you. Absolutely right. And we have lots of anecdotal stories. And the last one I heard recently was just about one of the children who had a school uniform on for like the first time in 3 or 4 years, possibly ever. But there are lots of anecdotal stories, and I think what we need to do is just make sure that we bring them to you on a regular basis. And I think there is also going to be part of the process originally. Put me right if I'm wrong on this. Caroline might know more about it, but there should be the Shaw Trust also are undertaking a kind of a longitudinal kind of study on what's happening. And so they've got that work in the background that's happening. But of course, the point of a longitudinal study is it's not like every year. It is something you track over a long period of time. But I think we need to be able to do both of those, and forgive us for not having done that before. But I think bringing that forward would be really useful.
Thank you. Sarah.
Yes, I also want to say how pleased I am to hear that this is able to be moved forward with the extra homes. I've got 2 at least in my ward, and it isn't the most popular thing to bring to an area but it settles down really well. The community really support it, and I'm really pleased to see this happening. There must be cross-party support for this. Nobody could disagree that educating and looking after your children in your own county must be the right thing to do if you've got the right facilities for them, of course. No, I just want to thank all those people involved in this, because I think it's and I extend my thanks to the previous administration as well. It was a great initiative, and we are very pleased to continue it. Thank you.
Thank you. So do I have any other questions in the room or online? I'm not seeing any hands or any virtual hands. So in that case, I can go to page 131 of the agenda pack and go to the recommendations, which are that executive is asked to 1, authorise the extension of the Homes and Horizons partnership to incorporate a total of 11 homes for children looked after. 2, authorise the use of up to £3 million of capital funding, comprising 1.5 million of previously agreed external borrowing and 1.5 million of Department for Education supplemental grant funding for the acquisition and redevelopment of properties to provide homes for children looked after. 3, that we note the cashable benefit to the revenue budget of this capital investment. And 4, that we delegate authority to the Executive Director for Community, Place and Economy to appoint professional services, undertake tendering and evaluation processes, and award contracts for the delivery of homes for children, all within the scope of the approved capital budget. So a proposer, please. Councillor Heather Shearer, and a seconder, Councillor Federica Smith-Roberts, and all those in favour? That is approved unanimously. And again, our thanks go to predecessor lead members and to the officers for the work they have done and will continue to do on this program. And maybe we could ask you, Heather, to talk to the Shaw Trust about their longitudinal study and at what point might be appropriate for perhaps children and family scrutiny to have a presentation from them. That would be good. Lovely. Thank you very much. So we'll move on now to agenda item 11. This item also has a confidential appendix. So again, please, colleagues, be very careful not to stray there, and officers stop us if we're going anywhere in that direction. So this is the decision to award contracts for discharge to assess intermediate care pathway 1 on pages 215 to 256, and I will ask Councillor Sarah Wakefield to introduce. Sarah.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm very pleased to be able to bring this forward. Just on a point of information, which I'm always wanting people to be able to pick up, you should be aware that most people who come out of hospital go home. They just go straight home. I'm informed by my lead officer that some 84% of those over 65 go straight home. They don't need any support when they get there. So quite a lot of people come out of hospital, nearly everybody does that, but of the cohort who come out of hospital and can't just go home without any support, the discharge to assess cohort, pathway 1 we call it, pathway 0 is when you go home with no help, pathway 1 is the where you have some help. So what happens is people come out of hospital, they go home, but the discharge to assess teams and the care providers will look at what they need in the home to live there comfortably once they've come out of hospital, and look at what reablement and other assistance they might need for a period of up to 6 weeks after they get home. So that's something that's really important in getting people back on their feet, because as we all have discovered in other meetings we've been in, that being off your feet in hospital is not a very good idea, particularly the older you get. So this is a full recommissioning of these contracts, and it's paid for out of the Better Care Fund, which is a joint fund shared between the NHS and the council. It's really important that it's done properly. We've done a full recommissioning exercise, lots of applicants. It's very popular because it's a service that care providers want to be involved in, and so that's a good thing. It's likely that the 7 providers we have got at the moment in the previous contracts will be reduced, but nothing's been made public yet about that. But very good process. It's taken a while to get through it because we've had so many applicants and so many people interested in the contract. That's all to the good. And I'm delighted that we're now able to bring it to this point of actually making a decision in executive. And I'd like to invite James Naxter to add anything he can to what I've said. I'm sure he's got lots to say.
James, do you mind just giving your job title when you speak, please?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I am the service manager for older people services in adult social care commissioning. I don't have a huge amount to add. That was very comprehensive. I think just to highlight how important this service is to our hospitals and the flow that gets through them. So we currently discharge around 3,000 people per year using this service. We've got aspirations to increase that as part of this contract. And so it really is a vital service for keeping our hospitals working, but also getting people home where they can regain as much independence as possible. It's the best place for their ongoing needs to be assessed. So it's a really, really, really important service. But I don't have anything else to add to what Sarah said, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, colleagues, so questions. We've got Heather Shearer first. Heather.
Cheating a little bit because it's not actually a question as such, but I just want to say I give my support to this. I mean, you're absolutely right. People don't recover. Well, they do recover in hospital, but people recover much better at home. It's exactly where they should be. It fits in with all of our kind of system and health and care objectives to be doing, with the hospital at home sort of thing, with being at home, preventing people from coming into hospital in the first place. It all fits brilliantly. And I just wanted to say I was at the public board of the NHS Foundation Trust yesterday, and part of the 278-page pack, I'll have you know, of information was something around this. But what was really nice to hear was I was in a room hearing very positive things about the discharge to assess, the pathways, and you're absolutely right that the acute hospitals are supported massively by this kind of thing. But it's for the people really. So I just want to say it's really important, and I do agree with it. Get my support.
Excellent. So do we have any more questions in the room? Anything from colleagues? And so Councillor Lucy Trimnell, please.
Thank you. So I would probably just be mirroring Councillor Shearer's remarks. I think it's really important that we look to ways to innovate the way that we provide care, that we can't just stick with things we've done because we've always done them, that we need to look at things that might make care more effective. I think Adults and Health a few months ago, they spoke about people being in a hospital setting, deconditioning by 10% per week, which is huge when you think about it. So the longer you're in hospital, the less chance you have of going back to where you came, the condition you were in the first place. So I think it's really important. Also, I mean, I don't know whether it saves any money. I'm assuming it saves money, but that money can be put into other services and spent in other ways. But I wondered if that was the case.
I think that's one for Mel Locke, isn't it?
Reablement always saves money, but more importantly, it's the right thing for people. And I've always said, if you get the right thing for people, you will save money. So what it does do, if you do it well, it saves on that long-term care package that individual is going to need. And it also saves on the fact that somebody doesn't need to go into residential or nursing care far too early. And this service doesn't matter whether it's somebody that it's a private supply of money, if they got their own money, or it's ourselves, whether it's a self-funder or not. After that 6 weeks, it does, because we will means test at that point, because actually some other services need to go on, but it does save us money. And you will see, as part of the transformation of My Life, My Future, we had a savings attached to this, and we are still saving because of the way in which we're working.
Okay, thank you. Sarah.
Just to say also, I think it's probably also the case that we have an older population in Somerset, which we know. People are living longer and living well for longer, but because of that, they may have to go into hospital for short term to have some procedure. I don't think, I remember when the Queen Mother I think she had a knee replaced, when she was about, well, she's certainly in her 90s, if not over that, or maybe it was a hip. She had some operation, and people went, "Gosh, isn't that amazing? You can have operation at that age." But I think now, that older population may go in for a procedure of some kind, or for a bit of care if they've got a chest infection or whatever it is. But what they want to do, what they will mostly want to do, is go back to where they were before, and not end up disabled by being in hospital and have to go into care. So this is really important. This is absolutely crucial to keeping those people in, when they get home, able to move around. And obviously, if you show somebody home, you could put a few handles up for them and things to walk around with. But actually, they might think, well, I can't really lift the kettle anymore, which is what happened to my father, or do various things. I can't do the ordinary things, so I can't carry on. And once you stop, it's very hard to start again. So I'm really excited about this working, and it does work. But of course, we do need to link up with the NHS to make sure we can get people out of hospital quicker too. And there are things to be done at that side.
Thank you. And I think that needs a plug for the Somerset Independent Living Centres at that stage. Yes. So if you don't mind, I'll go to Councillor Jill Slocum next online, because as we know, Jill is Chair of Adults and Health Scrutiny. So over to you, Jill.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you. I just want to say that Sarah will know, and Mel, that I've mirrored this and I've supported this way of thinking. The one thing I think is that we couldn't have gone on the way we were previously, and this is a really good way, futuristic way. The one question I would like to ask is, can we please ensure that we do have enough care out there to look after those people that are going to be home? It's something that we will scrutinise, but it is so important that by getting people to be home, and it does make a difference, it's absolutely making a difference. And I think, but that we have to make sure all the ducks are in order. So I just want to make a plea, and I know we're on it. I know we're looking at that anyway, but just to always keep ramping up about the fact that we do need that care, to be care at home as well, to make sure that person is discharged from home, discharged from hospital, and somebody will just make sure they're okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So James, can you come in there, please?
Yeah, of course, yeah. So yeah, and I think the way the service is structured, this service gives us enough capacity to be able to do that. But what's very important, I think, is what you're saying, is the ongoing care that's required. And actually, that's something that we're really lucky in Somerset. There's a huge amount of providers and capacity within our home care market. Actually, one of the tricks is managing it so that we don't have too much. We need to be able to make sure that market is the right size to be able to support everyone, but isn't too big, so that we're losing providers because there isn't enough work. And that's one of the things that I worry about and think about on a daily basis. And it's part of my role, is to ensure that we've got enough now and we know what we're going to need into the future. So yeah, hopefully reassured that that's something that we do look at very, very regularly and take very seriously.
Thank you. And then I've got a question from Councillor John Cook-Woodman.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was just on this point. It's very often the sort of next of kin, the son, the daughter, gets kind of landed with the organisation of all this. I wonder if there was, and I know that village agents are very, very good, a very good point of information. But the older person that's gone, the person who needs care has gone into a hospital. I just wondered if there was an information package or anything that the next of sort of kin, who quite often gets left with the organisation, could get to help them be a facilitator, to make sure that they could come home as quickly as possible, to make sure that certain things were in place. Because very often, although there are lots of good things around, it's quite often something that you've never dealt with before in your life, and it is an absolute mystery. So I don't know quite how we'd find out who that person would be, but it might be something that's really helpful.
Let's go to Mel Locke, and then Mel will go on to recommendations.
So what we do have is, and we've recognised that for us, our self-funders, it's often quite difficult for them to understand what to do. And one of the things that Sarah has been really clear about is how do we do that better. So what we have got is some really good information out there now. We have information, we're out recording, we're out doing seminars, we're doing all sorts of information to the public to help the public understand what to do, because the best thing ever is to keep people at home, but sometimes don't know how to do that. So there is information, there's some good recordings, some good webinars that anybody can watch. Our village and community agents know exactly what to do in that place. And we are out just about to have some surgeries out there for people to turn up to, if they want to book, to turn up to ask some of those questions. What we'll do is make sure that information pack is out with you again, if that's okay.
Thank you. So just Federica Smith-Roberts before we move on.
I just wanted to come in there actually, because I direct both residents and even colleagues in the place that I work when they've had adult social care to our website, and they've found it really useful as to where to start their journey when supporting their parents or family members. So I would also go and have a look at our website, because it does have some really useful information on.
We have been, as Mel has said, we have been trying to get information out to the public, because what I want people to do is to think about it before it happens, because usually it happens suddenly. Your elderly relative falls over or has a health issue, and it happens suddenly and you're not prepared. But what you need to think is, I need to be prepared. I need to know what to do. I didn't know what to do when it happened to my own father. And I thought, I'm fairly intelligent, but I couldn't find out what to do. I just rang up Somerset Care, because the only place I'd heard of. But I didn't know what to do. So we've got information on our website. We've had public events, and we will do more. And we're just starting a phone line, actually, aren't we? Which is going to be starting in South Somerset, where you can book an appointment on to speak to somebody online about, and there will be bookable appointments, because we need to make sure that people are equipped to deal with it when this happens, and it will happen sooner or later. I mean, very few elderly people don't end up having to change what they're doing, often quite suddenly, eventually. And I just caution everybody. I mean, I'm obviously going to have to tell my children what to do fairly soon. So.
Okay, thanks. That's been helpful actually, and it is surprising what you can find on the website to help people. You just and quite often I find it just by Googling too. So no more questions on this one. Let's go to the recommendations on pages 215 and 216. So the recommendations are that executive agrees to approve the outcome of the procurement process to award contracts to the suppliers named in tender evaluation report confidential Appendix B to provide discharge to assess services for a period up to 10 years. That's 5 + 2 + 2 + 1. The total value of these contracts will be up to 78 million over the 10 years. And then the second recommendation is to apply the exempt information provision as set out in the Local Government Act 1972, Schedule 12A, and therefore to treat the attached confidential Appendix B in confidence. So this is although we have not discussed it, as it contains commercially sensitive information and as the case for the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing that information. And then the third recommendation we have not needed. So I'm looking for a proposer and Sarah Wakefield and a seconder, Heather Shearer, and then all those in favour, please. So approved unanimously. Thank you very much. And thank you, James, for taking the time to join us this morning. So we're moving now to agenda item 12. But before we go there, I will be bringing forward exclusion of the press and public. So we will be going into a confidential session for this agenda item. And so I need to start here with that we consider passing a resolution having been duly proposed and seconded and in accordance with Regulation 4 of the Local Authorities (executive arrangements) meetings and access to information England Regulations 2012 that the press and public be excluded from the meeting during consideration of those parts of this agenda item, and for clarity, that is the entire agenda item, which relate to exempt information on the grounds that it is likely, in view of the nature of the business to be transacted or the nature of the proceedings, that if members of the press and public were present, there would be disclosure to them of exempt information. And the reasons are that the item is likely to contain information relating to paragraph 3, relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information. Paragraph 5, information in respect of which a claim to legal professional privilege could be maintained in legal proceedings. And paragraph 7, information relating to any action taken or to be taken in connection with the prevention, investigation or prosecution of crime. So I am looking, please, for a proposer. So I have Councillor Heather Shearer and a seconder. I'll take Councillor Theo Butt-Philip, and then I am looking, colleagues, for agreement on the exclusion of press and public for this entire item. So that is approved unanimously.